Hello everyone, it's Zaynab here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to paint these simple loose watercolor roses in just a few simple steps. So grab your paints and let's begin. Okay, so for materials I will be using Canson Aquarelle block. This is a very affordable student paper. I will be linking all the materials today in the description box, so make sure to check it out. And then I'll be using just two brushes for today, which is a size 10 Princeton brush and then a size 8 silver black velvet brush. 4 colours, keeping it very simple, as this is just to practice how we paint a rose. I'm using Carmine Permanent mixed in with a little bit of yellow ochre and some burnt sienna. And then for my green, I've mixed in Hocus Green and I've put in some burnt sienna and a little bit of black just to give it quite a dark undertone. So I'm just going to do a swatch for both colours so you can just see what it looks like once we start painting it. So this is our rose colour, so as you can see it's a very nice light pink. And then for our green, we're just taking this very nice dark leafy green. Okay, so those are the two colours we're working with today. Right, so to begin, we're going to be doing practice drills. So these are just the strokes that I like to do. I like to use around 3 strokes when I paint a rose, and particularly I like to use this size 8 by Silver Black because it doesn't hold as much water and it has a very thin point. So going in with my rose colour, the first stroke that I like to do, I'm going to make it quite bigger so you can see clearly, is these sort of little C shapes. So I just sort of push the brush down and I paint these little half C shapes, and they can go in either direction, some at the bottom, some at the top. Just practice with your brush to make these little half C shapes like so. Very simple and very easy, and this is just for the very beginning of our rose. Okay, so I know that's in a random shape, but that's what it looks like. And then for the second shape that I like to paint, it is going to be again like this half C shape but just slightly bigger. So I like to take my brush at an angle and then starting from the tip, pushing down and lifting up. So we're making it sort of bended, so just starting at the tip, pushing down and lifting up. And now if you were to do this quickly, because we're going to be painting these loose, it would sort of look like this. A bit more thicker, some more thin, but it doesn't really matter when you're painting loose. We're not trying to be precise, but in terms of the brush technique, it's sort of this technique where the brush goes tip, pushing down and then lifting up. So tip, pushing down, lifting up. And you can just practice this as many times as you want, but that is essentially the shape that we'll be doing today. Okay, and then lastly, for the biggest shape that we'll be painting, I'm just going to take a more diluted wash of the Carmine and burnt sienna. We're going to be painting an S shape. So, and it's kind of actually like a reverse 3. Like so. Just spread that paint everywhere. You can see if when you paint you have this puddle that sort of comes, it means that your brush is actually holding too much water. So you can just dry some of it up. Okay, and then that means just hold a little bit less of the pigment in your brush. So we're going to be doing this S shape, and this is just for the end of the rose where we're going to be, we don't want things to be so circular, and we want to add a bit of depth and just add some definition with the shape, because obviously it is a petal, and they just go all around, and you can do 3 little curves or you can do 2. Just play around with it. It is obviously a loose floral, but these are primarily the drills that I like to do when painting either a tight rose or a loose floral rose. Let's begin with painting our roses. So I'm taking just a slightly wet brush. I don't want it to be overly wet. And just taking a little bit of the rose colour on my brush and then dipping it slightly in the carmine just to have a darker colour in the middle. We're just going to start with our first rose, and we're going to maybe put it, let's put it on the top. So just starting with those little C shapes, just going around like so. Sometimes as you get further out, you just push down a little bit more. And now this is what takes it from being a tight rose into a loose rose. So you want to go with a clean brush, and this is where I'm using my size 10, and then with the water you're just going to blend the colors out. This is what's going to create the effect of a loose rose, because you can see some of the petals but you can't see all of them. Okay, so then going in again, picking up more color, and now we're just going to repeat, but now we'll be pushing down the brush a little bit more. And then where you can see some white space, just add in little strokes just to add like there is some more petals in between. And then going in again with a clean brush, we are going to be pushing and blending that color out. We don't want any harsh lines in our roses. And as you're carrying the water, just start waving your brush so that it isn't going to make like this very circular line. So as you add a little bit more color, we're now going to get slightly more diluted of the rose color, and we're just going to be adding, as you can see, just a little bit of a wavy petal. And then going with the water again, we're going to want to really drag it out and just make sure that we are letting the water do its job. Then taking a little bit more of the carmine, we're going to go in to the middle where it's still wet. You're going to add some slightly little strokes of extra color. This is just to add 2 tones to the rose so it looks a little bit more interesting, and I think it looks prettier once dry. Okay, so that's our first rose. So with this, I do like to add some leaves whilst it's still wet. My leaves are very rough. I don't really practice what shapes I'm going to do, and actually for this I like to add these sort of little rough stems, but I do recommend using a thinner brush so you can see the size 8 how much thinner it is compared to this size 10, which is very thick. And just sort of add these wispy lines just for a bit of interest. I think it looks quite nice once dried. Okay, so that's our first rose. So now we're going to go on to our second rose. And now we're going to paint exactly the same thing that we've just done. So taking in a slightly more darker pigment, and we're going to paint this rose slightly at a little bit of an angle. So we're going to make the bud slightly higher up, and we're going to have more thicker petals coming from this side and thinner petals from that side, so it looks as if the rose is coming, we're watching it from an angle. So as you can see, I'm just going to add thinner lines and then push down a bit more as I come to the bottom. Then taking the clean brush as we did before, making sure it doesn't have any of the green. And we're just going to brush those petals out, get that nice loose effect, which is so beautiful with watercolor. And then we're just going to keep on repeating the same thing, as you can see, what I do with my brush is I try to control it, but I'm very happy when it wants to do its own thing. I just think it always looks better when the brush decides where it goes. The less control I have of it, the better, as it just ends up looking more natural. So as you can see, I'm going very big on my petals towards the bottom, and I am staying quite small at the top, and this is just to give the effect of the rose being more at an angle shape. So I'm going to leave that. That's quite a big rose. I'm going to go again with the leaves. Again, I'd like to want to add them whilst they're still wet so that they blend together. Just going to maybe add some here, add a little bit there. Just go in with those wispy lines that we mentioned earlier. Maybe add some coming out here, making sure to get those, the green and the light pink touching together. Maybe add some leaves here to just contrast it slightly between the roses so they're not all touching. And there you have it. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our third rose. So we're just repeating the same thing again. Just being very relaxed with our brush. The only point that I really think about is towards the beginning of the brush, towards the beginning of the rose, sorry. So it's only when I'm really at just, okay, so let's do another rose, and maybe we will have this one angled. We'll have this one be a nice straight rose. So we're seeing this one from the front. So everything's going to be nice and equal all the way around. Just repeating the same thing, going with water. And as you can see, just with the water alone, it gives the effect of extra petals. So you don't have to go back where the water is and add more petals, because it's fine if there's lighter petals and darker ones. And then just going in with the brush, remembering to use that wavy S technique that we practiced earlier on. Maybe we're going to make this one a slightly smaller rose, so we have a difference in size. I want this one to be very, very loose. So we're just going to take a lot of water, clean my brush off, make sure there isn't too much, and just taking the brush, we're just actually going to clean some of that up. No, I shouldn't use my finger, but I actually don't have any wipes around me, which is a shocker, as I usually always do, but it's fine. So now just going with some green, we're going to add some nice green leaves here, maybe do some smaller ones on this side, and just have fun with it. There is no right or wrong. We are just learning, we are practicing. Everything takes time. Roses have definitely been one of the hardest things for me to get comfortable painting with watercolor. So I definitely wouldn't expect anyone to just do this and be so happy with their work, but you should be very proud of what you've painted today and that you've taken some time for yourself and some time to practice some art. And there you have it. So I really hope you enjoyed today's rose tutorial, and I hope that you found it helpful